Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Around the Big Ten podcast brought to you by Saturday Glory. Mark Givler here with Chip Minnick, as always. We are in the middle of our kind of pre-spring questions for each Big Ten team. We're going to be asking 3 questions of every team going into the spring, kind of the key things that we need to see this spring or coming out of the spring, hopefully at the end of April to, hopefully those things have been answered and just, what those teams need to be doing, focusing on this spring to take it up whatever levels they're looking to accomplish in 2025. So we're going to go with Illinois right now. So we got 3 questions on the Fighting Illini coming off a tremendous 10-3 season, surprised a lot of people, a lot of haters going into that bowl game. They beat South Carolina, who everyone whined it should have been in the playoffs. So that was nice. Brett Bielema was really working. Shane Beamer there in a blender for everyone to see. So that was a fun end of the Illini season, but now it's time to regroup for spring. They lose a big receiver in Pat Bryant. That was a big part of their passing game. It wasn't like a super like high octane passing. Like they had some big play ability, but it wasn't like they threw for like 5,000 yards last year. He had almost 1,000 receiving. Big year for him. They got to replace him. They went to the portal. Chip. How do they replace him?
Well, that's the thing. Like you just said, that they went to the portal. I mean, just kind of, taking a quick glance at Pat Bryant. He, like you said, he didn't go over 1,000 yards, but he averaged. I mean, he was their big play receiver. I mean, he averaged over 18 yards a catch. So that's one of those things where, you can't really necessarily replace, that kind of big play potential. But, adding in, Hudson Clement, adding in Justin Bowick, that may be a step in the right direction. But as we've been talking about other programs within the Big Ten, developing that chemistry, just because you added somebody from the transfer portal doesn't necessarily mean that you can expect the same kind of production that you got from a Pat Bryant. So that's going to be something that the Illinois offense has to really work hard on this coming when it comes to the spring practices, is getting these guys acclimated in and getting them used to Luke Altmaier, especially, developing that chemistry so the offense doesn't miss a beat when the 2025 season starts.
Yeah, that's undoubtedly a big thing for Illinois. How do they replace a guy like that? You mentioned the 2 of the big transfers, Hudson Clement from West Virginia, 51 catches, 741 yards, 5 touchdowns last year at West Virginia. So they're getting an instant producer there, you would think. Justin Bowick from Ball State, it's got a couple of years of eligibility left. So they've made the effort to do it, and now we just got to wait and see which guy kind of steps up and takes this like number 1 receiver type of role for them. Because again, it's not like a pass happy offense, but you got to have guys who can make plays downfield. So they got to replace a big one there with Pat Bryant. Another question, and for me, this might actually be the biggest one. Can they keep their foot on the gas? Because it's very easy to come out of nowhere and win 10 games and everyone's patting you on the back. Oh, that was such a fun year. What a lovely surprise this was. And you guys were great. And, unbelievable. Then you've got to go back to work, though. And we've seen a lot over the years. In fact, it's happened in that state a lot with like Northwestern, where like Northwestern has a great year out of nowhere. Everyone picks them to like finish high in the Big Ten the next year, and they go like 4-8. And it's just like, how do you make sure you're keeping your foot on the gas here?
Very good question. I mean, I said this before on previous episodes, and I'm not going back on anything I said, is that outside of Curt Cignetti, I thought the job that Brett Bielema did at Illinois was tremendous. Like the fact that they went 10-3. They beat Michigan, as you alluded to, the fact that they had a very impressive end to the season by taking care of business against South Carolina in the Citrus Bowl, showing that they truly were one of the better teams in the country. They wound up, I believe, ranked 21st in the country when the final poll came out. So when it comes to, being able to keep their foot on the gas, say what you will about Brett Bielema, that, yeah, he inherited a good situation when he was at Wisconsin. I think that he has the right mentality that, all right, guys, you've seen how hard we've had to work and fight and scrap to, get to this point. So we can't take our foot off the gas. We can't let up. So I think that, Bielema probably has the right mindset, because you're going to be going from hunter to hunted, in the sense that there are other teams within the Big Ten are going to be eager to try and knock Illinois off that 10-win perch. And so I think Bielema is probably preaching that, like, hey, everyone's going to be coming for us. We're no longer going to be the surprise team. So we have to be ready to take everyone's best shot.
Like, he is really going to have his finger on the pulse of that locker room this spring. So many people now are picking them as like a dark horse, like could compete for a playoff spot. Like, they went from a team that no one was even thinking about before last year. They have the great year. Everyone pats them on the back. Now they're everyone's favorite, surprise dark horse pick. And that, Nick Saban would call this rat poison. So he's got to be very careful. I think I really like their roster. I like how they've kind of plugged some gaps in the roster this offseason as far as what they lost and what they needed to improve. Like, I think they've done the right things there. I think they have a good roster. I don't look at their roster turnover and say, oh, I don't know how they're ever going to possibly be able to overcome this loss or that loss. Like, it's just a matter of mindset and continuing to develop. And I think this is a team that can duplicate what it did last year. And again, they'll have more offseason hype, which always helps you in terms of rankings. I know people say it doesn't, but it does. Like, if you start higher, you get more built-in mistakes. You just do. If you start as the number 5 team in the country, you can lose a couple games. If you start unranked and you lose a couple games, you might be in trouble. So, like, they're going to have that little built-in advantage this year that they didn't have last year of, like, the early season hype. And so it's just, again, how do you deal with that? How do you make sure you're doing things when no one else wants to be working in, like, the middle of July and it's 95 degrees and the coaches aren't around? It's just like player run, drills and conditioning. Like, who's making sure everyone's doing what they're supposed to be doing? And I think that's going to be, like, the big thing going into the spring is, like, okay, let's handle this off season like a business trip. Let's make this spring window a business trip. Let's do what we need to do. Let's get better. Let's fix the areas we need to fix, and not kind of wallow in, like, the awesomeness of the 10-win season you just had. But so this is a huge key for me. And then the defensive line, they do lose some guys. I think Dennis Briggs played in college. Probably played with Simeon Rice, I think, on that defensive line for Illinois. He finally is off to bigger things. T-Raw Edwards, shout out to him, a local product. I live in Columbus. He's from Groveport. He is moving on. They lose a couple of maybe arguably their 2 best defensive linemen up front. They have tried to plug some things via the portal. We'll see, like, how that goes, but that's got to be, like, I think it's almost a bigger question. Like, I feel like they've got the right combination to replace Pat Bryant. It looks like they've done enough there. Have they done enough on the defensive line? Kind of where do you see that defensive line shaping up as far as, can they duplicate what they got out at last year, or have they done enough to keep that thing rolling?
That remains to be seen. I mean, they were, I don't want to say active in the transfer portal. I mean, like, they added players, but they didn't go nuts like some other teams within the Big Ten. I mean, they kind of addressed their needs, and they identified, James Thompson Jr., Kurt Neal, both from Wisconsin, coming in. And when we talk about Brett Bielema, he is, when that old adage about how a team takes on the personality of its head coach, his teams have always been built around being very strong on both sides of the line of scrimmage and a strong running game. Your question as it relates to the defensive line is that has been something that Bielema's Illinois teams have shown very well during his tenure there, is that, say what you will about Illinois, like, not necessarily being the most dynamic offensive team, but that you're going to be in for a 60-minute fight when you're playing against Illinois, especially on the defensive side of the ball, because their defense is very physical. It's pretty sound. So it remains to be seen if, like the fact that they're losing a lot of experience, but the fact that they identified players within the conference and around the country via the transfer portal that they believe can come in and supplement that defense and make a positive contribution in 2025.
Yeah. So you're losing Briggs, you're losing Ezekiel Holmes, Edwards. We talked about that. I really think James Thompson Jr. is the key to this. Now they're going to need more than that. They're going to need 3 or 4 guys to step up to give them a legitimate rotation. But in terms of a guy that has maybe a little bit of extra juice to him, a little bit of, borderline star power, I think James Thompson was one of their best pickups in the portal. Again, they didn't go nuts in the portal, which I actually like. And I think it also shows they didn't have a lot of roster holes. As I kind of mentioned a few minutes ago, I don't see a lot of holes on the roster. I think they filled the receiver position pretty well. And I think, again, to me, it's mindset and then this D-line. Can they come up? Is it going to be like the 85 Bears? Probably not. But they've got to be, Brett Bielema's teams, you've got to be able to run the football. You've got to be able to stop the run. We're very much convinced they can run the football. They're going to have a veteran quarterback. They're going to have some good receivers. There's a lot to like about the offense. Can they line up defensively and be physical up front? And I think James Thompson coming in from Wisconsin is going to help them tremendously on that front. So that will be a big step up. The interesting thing with Thompson, he did miss 2024 due to injury. So that's going to be another question there. But 29 tackles and 3 sacks as in 2023. So he's got the kind of the proof of concept there. He's a 6'5", 295. He's a big guy, can kind of be a 1 or 2 gap guy, but he can take up a lot of space there in the middle. And they do have some guys in terms of outside linebacker types, edge types. I think that they'll be able to plug in to help them. But James Thompson was one of the big up and coming young defensive linemen in the Big Ten 2 years ago. So assuming he's all good from the injury, there's no reason to think he's not. That could be one of the big, transfer portal additions in the Big Ten this offseason, and certainly something that I think will help shore up an area of maybe some concern there for Illinois going into the spring.
Yeah, just looking at James Thompson, he's one of those guys that, and this better than anybody, he's from Cincinnati, Ohio. Kind of like he's one of these guys at Ohio State. They play at Illinois, which is going to be interesting. And he's going to be one of those guys that, an Ohio State fan will be like, how did this Ohio guy get away from the Buckeyes? And if he's healthy, he could certainly make a significant contribution for that Illinois defensive line.
Yeah. So look, I think we're in agreement. I think we like the look of this team. I think on paper, we like the outlook. Brett Bielema's had a lot of success in the Big Ten. And it's just, okay, plug a couple of spots. And most importantly, don't get complacent because you overachieved last year, because one year's overachievement can be next year's underachievement, as we've seen over the years if you get too far away from your process. So I think that's going to be a big thing for Illinois this offseason, and certainly in the spring, of course. But again, this is a team that has, I think, the pieces to make things interesting in the Big Ten, like in the top 5-6 teams in the Big Ten next year. I really do. And then of course, schedules come into play. We'll do all the schedule analysis and stuff like that after spring. We'll got to revisit these questions again after spring, but just in terms of, the early outlook, this is a team that I think should be able to make some noise in the league. And so we'll see how their spring goes, but we'll be back here soon with another one. Hope you guys are enjoying these. Let us know in the comments how you're feeling about the team by team little 3 questions going into the spring. Hopefully, Illinois fans, if you're watching this, guys, give us a subscription on the channel. We appreciate that. Help other college football fans find us. But again, thanks everyone for watching and listening, and we'll be back here soon with another one.